I'm back at it again with my rent rant. I'm back at it again with my rent rant because why is a studio apartment $2,500? Like, please, like, tell me. And the worst of it all is, like, why is a studio apartment $2,500 in the Bronx? Or why is it in an area where there's nobody at? I don't understand. They said the more buildings there were, the more the competition was gonna lower it. Why isn't the competition lower it? The rent somehow still stays at the same price. Why is a one bedroom $2,000? I feel like back in the old days, a one bedroom was like $900. At least that's what I thought. Why is the studio $2,500? I don't get it. When somebody finds the answer, please let me know. Please, like, please.
New York, why are you doing this to us?
I don't know whether to be reassured or terrified that a real estate agent is making this video because they stand to benefit from the astronomical rents in New York. So if they're complaining, you know the situation is bad. I'm personally dealing with this situation right now. I live in the Gowanus neighborhood of Brooklyn. I've been in the same apartment for 5 years. I had every intention of staying here for a long, long time. I really like this apartment. I have a backyard. That's so rare in New York. But the building was sold last October, and the new owners just sent me an email the other day with a rent raise of $1,000, 40% increase. I'm kind of surprised that it took them this long to hit me with this because, like I said, they took over, I think, about 6 months ago. And I'm month to month. I haven't had a lease in years, so they could have immediately asked for more rent. But I have a feeling it has something to do with this proposed legislation in New York State right now, which would cap the amount of money that a landlord can raise rent in any building, not just a rent stabilized one, for a tenant in good standing that's lived there for over a year. So I think they're trying to get it in before that law would maybe take effect. So unfortunately, the only legal protection I have is that they must give me 90 days written notice of any rent increases over 5%. So once negotiations stall, because they will, my next door neighbor is going through the same thing, and we have similar apartments, similar rents, and they came down a little in price, but nowhere close to what I would be comfortable paying. So I know it's going to be the same when I try to negotiate with them. So I'll have 90 days to find a new place. But if you watch the Stitch video, you know what I'm in for. I took a look on Street Easy the other day, and it's grim. I put in the max rent I'd be comfortable paying, which is what I'm currently paying, and almost nothing came up. And I'm hearing horror stories of bidding wars, of people actually bidding on apartments like they do on houses, which is just insane to me, and I don't know how we can continue like this. It is going to destroy
I know everyone's just dying to know what I'm doing.
All right, and my question is, who's talking about this stuff? Who is talking about this stuff in a substantive way that you could vote for in 2024? Is Joe Biden talking about housing? Is Donald Trump talking about housing? Oh, do you know that his son, Jared Kushner, is like a big, giant slumlord? Okay, you know that. Do you know that this girl, if you go back and watch her video, I've been following her before all this debacle with her apartment. So she lives on the Seaport in Southie. Nice, great area. If anybody knows what Seaport's like, if you're not here, it's beautiful. She has a 450 square foot studio apartment. In 2021, she paid $2,600. 22, she paid $2,900. 2023, she paid $3,100. And now they want her to pay, in 3 years, $3,444. That's what they want her to pay for a 450 square foot studio, okay? Who's paying these rents? Who is paying $3,500 for a 450 square foot studio? And the only thing that, listen, I'm no housing expert, but I do have ears and eyes, and I see things and I read things and I listen to people's stories. And I think about how nobody I know now, unless you were lucky like me to buy a house in 2018 when I did, and then refinance really low in 2020 and 21 at the height of the pandemic, nobody I know, if you didn't buy a house during that time, is getting into, unless you're paying a gazillion dollars, you're paying $1 million for a house that you basically is falling apart. I was someplace yesterday up the street in Milton, and I said, this house is worth $950,000. Like, it's nice, It's a nice, cute neighborhood. But this isn't a 950. My house just got reassessed. I'm like, it's not worth that. But it is worth it. And then who pays for it? And guess what? Nobody's selling. Nobody's selling. I wasn't going anywhere anyway, but people like me aren't selling because they're in 2.5% interest rates and they've gained $300,000 in equity in 3 years, 4 years. Why would anybody leave? To go buy a house that's like double the price that it was 5 years ago for a 7% interest rate? Oh, do you know who bought all the houses during COVID? Oh, that's corporate America, LLCs, trusts, not families, not members of your community. Do you know who owns these buildings in the seaport and downtown and in every city you live in? Corporations. You know what she was upset about, the girl in this video? They basically want her to pay like 12 grand to get out of her lease. And she's like, my dad came and he thinks he can negotiate anything. And I know how that goes because I think I can negotiate anything. And I come from a dad who thinks he can negotiate anything. And they won't negotiate with them. They won't. They're like, no, you have to pay $12,000 and this is what it is. And like this, you owe this. And you know why they can do that? Because it isn't your local landlord. It isn't the guy down the street who rents to like the kid whose son grew up with and now he's home from college. No, it's corporations. And what they are doing is they are taking your power away from you. Your property ownerships are the most important rights you have in the United States of America. If you own property, you have access to everything. You have access to everything. And if you don't, you are in a different category. And so they are just creating a nation of tenancy. I mean, we're going back to feudalism. We're going to be serfs paying off fees to the master so they can always do what they want. Facebook, Google, they're building cities and towns. So then you work for them and you live for them and then they control everything. Who is paying $3,500 for a 450 square apartment? I don't care how pretty the fucking water looks. Who has that kind of money? I'm more and more convinced each day that it's either you're at the very bottom or you're at the very top. They want no middle class. They want no middle class.
Someone explain why anyone would want to stay in a high-rise luxury apartment, because I just left Nashville and downtown they have these luxurious apartments. I mean, they are beautiful. The building, magnificent. It's about 40, 45, 50 floors, something like that. So it is a beautiful building. But how do you justify paying $2,000 a month for 500 square feet? Maybe the prices are different in the South where I live, but I'm not paying $2,000 for just 500 square feet. I don't care how luxurious it is. I don't care how many flights you have to take to get up to where I am. No. 500 square feet, $2,000. What is the math on that per square footage? Like, no. How do you think any groceries
$2,000 a month, and my rent is $1,660.
Sadly, this is getting to be the story of pretty much everybody out there. I haven't rented since I was in my 20s, so I've been out of the housing market forever on this shit. But I tried to help my niece get a place about 6-8 months ago, something like that. And she was telling me everything she found was $1,900, $2,300, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, sweetheart, you just let me look for you. There's something out there, $500-$600 a month that's decent. I'll find it. There's not. Like, how? I mean, why did we get to this point? Why is just a decent place to sleep and cook and survive exist? Why is it $3,000, $4,000 a fucking month? I mean, it's ridiculous. Something's got to change. Otherwise, we're going to end up with half the country homeless.
Finally, the Department of Justice is now investigating the rent prices. And for you landlords, your days of price gouging are over. Now, shout out to Uprise, Rhode Island, because they published a story about how the FBI had raided an office in Atlanta called Cortland Management because of price fixing for rent. Now, the Department of Justice had launched this investigation and then issued out a limited subpoena in order to grab some information about how this property management company by the name of Cortland Management had been fixing the rent prices since 2016. Now, the story actually entails this software called RealPage, and it's a software that is sold to landlords who own like large properties in order to tell them how to determine rent rates. And that's normally fine, except Real Pages covers about 60 to 80% of all rental properties across the United States. Now, according to Uprise, the scheme allegedly works by encouraging landlords to adopt the software Real Pages pricing recommendations, which most landlords do about 80 or 90% of the time. This coordinated effort amongst landlords to follow the software's suggested drive up rental prices by reducing the availability of units. The goal is to prevent landlords from undervaluing their properties, thereby ensuring higher rents nationwide. So let me break the scheme down to you. So say a landlord has 100 units and the price is fixed at $1,200 a month per unit. Let's just say they're all 2-bedroom units. Now, the landlord goes and gets that Real Pages software and it says increase the rent to $1,500 and then make only 20 of those units available, even though the landlord would still have 80 more units to rent. So now me, the consumer, is going to the landlord's property management website and I'm seeing these apartments that are nice, but they're not available. So then I rent, but 19 other people rent. Now, the landlord is making $1,500 a unit for only the 20 units he had available. And then he can slowly start opening up more units at that fixed rate. And now, let's say another landlord who owned a property next to my landlord, he sees those rates and then he does the same. There you have an inflation of rent vis-a-vis a domino effect. Now, the reason why the Department of Justice was so interested in this Real Pages software is because that although rent prices were surging in 2016, they were noticing that there was an increased vacancy rate. So they were noticing that there were a lot more available apartments for what landlords were charging, which doesn't make any sense because if you have more vacancies, i.e., the rent should be coming down. So why was the rent increasing about 80% since 2016? Because of Real Pages. Now, the investigation started off as a civil probe, and now it's starting to look criminal. Remember, Real Pages is the largest rental suggestion software in the nation. In the nation. In the nation. So if all of our landlords are using the same software to suggest rent prices, then we got a problem. Because there's got to be a reason why the rent was so high. I'm going to keep you guys updated on this story, and as soon as the Department of Justice launches their first press conference about it, I'll keep you guys posted.